Hi everyone, good Wednesday afternoon and welcome to Go Local Live. I'm Go Local News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in with us here in downtown Providence as we get a little outside Rhode Island with a fairly familiar face. Ted Siedle, former SEC lawyer, wrote License to Steal, looking at the pension reform put forth by then General Treasurer Gina Raimondo here in Rhode Island. Since then has now been the largest whistleblower in SEC history and is still continuing to keep a close eye on Rhode Island. Ted, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So just to back things up a little bit, I want to talk about a piece we have this week. You were featured in CNBC as your role as a top whistleblower. Tell folks a little bit about that feature and your reaction. Do you think they did it justice?
Well, the reason they wanted to tell me was because there had been so many stories about whistleblowers' lives being ruined, divorced, penniless, blackballed in their industry, suicide, whatever, just these, in prison. So CNBC wanted to do a story. They wanted to profile a whistleblower who had actually done well, had prospered, had survived and prospered. And so it was a strange kind of almost lifestyle piece where showing me jogging, and which was horrible, or in 95-degree heat, and then swimming in my pool or whatever, and my home. But the point was not that I have done well. It is. But the main point was to show that whistleblowers don't have to go through hell.
Okay.
And so that was, and then they had other experts on the show talk about the law of whistleblowing or whatever. But it was kind of a life of a whistleblower.
The life of a whistleblower. Clearly, timing was, I'm sure, intended to coincide with what's currently taking place in D.C. But would you call that maybe apples and oranges for a political whistleblower, if you will, with major international intrigue, a financial whistleblower in the case of yours? Or are there overlaps? Do you think people know how difficult it actually is to be a whistleblower?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, the timing was, they had been asking me to do this for 6 months. And I had put them off because they wanted to interview my wife and children, and they all agreed. We all agreed that was a bad idea. We did not want that done. So the timing of this was supposed to be 6 months ago. So it did not coincide with anything. There was a lot of the hundreds of comments to the video were NBC had purposely done this. And I'm not one to poo-poo conspiracies, but I can assure you, in this case, there was no time. They wanted to do it months ago, and I put them off for a long time. But on another point, whenever you have whistleblowers, there's always criticisms that they're financially or politically or whatever, or motivated or disgruntled employees. So the current Trump whistleblower raises the same issue of, does it really matter? Do we really care whether Ted Siedle is a Republican, Democrat, Independent, or whatever? Or do we care that the Trump whistleblower is in? And do we care if Edward Siedle or anyone else is a disgruntled, fired employee? Who cares? Because all that we really care about is, are they telling the truth? Are they exposing illegalities? And that's what a whistleblower is supposed to do. That's the definition of whistleblower. And so it's an interesting point in the political whistleblower versus the financial, let's say. But it's a similar issue. There's always pushback trying to discredit the whistleblower for whatever reason. I mean, some very successful whistleblowers have put in jail because they participate in the crime. So there's always this pushback.
So as we said, you're continuing to keep a close eye here on Rhode Island. Recently penned a piece saying there are major red flags as you're looking forensically into the bankruptcy of the St. Joseph Pension Fund collapse. Talk with us a little bit about that, keeping an eye on it, and why you had such strong concerns.
Well, the first thing is that I have long been of the opinion that every dead pension deserves an autopsy. And, you know, the workers in this pension have gone their entire lives, 30, 40 years perhaps, dependent on this pension. This pension is like their spouse. And then something they have looked to depend on as they age, whatever, and suddenly it's been taken from them without warning, without explanation. And I think that whenever a pension dies, the workers deserve an explanation, and they haven't gotten an explanation. And indeed, the people who have been responsible for dealing with this, former Attorney General did nothing, apparently completely missed the boat. And the people who are involved with it now are not pension experts. They do not have substantial pension resumes at all. And no one has really explained to these workers, retirees, what happened to this pension that for the last 40 years or 30 years, they have been led to believe they could depend on a pension that they were promised. So I'd like to see a forensic investigation done. I think the people deserve an explanation of what went wrong.
So, as you're looking at St. Joseph's, there's also, as been publicly reported, another pension system that you're looking into as well that you can't divulge because you're in the midst of it, but you are looking into Cranston. Do we have a time frame? Do we know when we're going to get your findings as you looked into Cranston pensions?
I'd say the Cranston investigation should hopefully be done by the year. I would say by the end of the end of December, hopefully mid-January. Possibly sooner, but I'd say probably we've been off to a bit of a slow start getting the documents and all of the information we need. But I think that's probably a realistic timetable.
And so, looking at Cranston, looking at other municipalities, not just here in Rhode Island, but around the country, perhaps cash-strapped, if you will. If towns and cities are having issues with their pensions and say, do we really have the resources to conduct an investigation into it? Obviously, you're selling that point that they should be looked at. But do you think towns and cities get that, that investment is sometimes necessary to be able to uncover where things really lie?
Well, in the work that I've done, I've typically found that there was enough money in the pension had it been properly managed. So pensions are very simple. There's three components to the health of a pension. One is how much money goes into the pension. The second one is what happens to the money for the 30 or 40 years that it's in the pension over a working life. And the third is how much money goes out of the pension. So it's how much money is poured into the pot, how the money is managed in the pot, and then how much money goes out of the pot. Usually public debate about pensions focuses on struggling pensions focuses on did enough money go into the pot, and are we, the community, willing to put more money into the pot because apparently the pension is financially underwater. And then there's a lot of attention paid on the question of too much money going out of the pot. Are pension benefits too rich? I believe there was an article yesterday there's some local newspaper in Rhode Island about some extreme cases of pension excesses. So that's off taxpayers don't want to put more money in the pot, and taxpayers are very critical of where they see too much money going out of pot to certain individuals. But one of the things that my focus has always been on, let's focus on how the money it has been invested over that 30-year period. And if you're losing even 1% a year over 30 years, you basically lose half the pension is what happens. The pension underperforms dramatically. And so all the investigations I have ever done have concluded that there was enough money in the pot. The problem was the money wasn't managed properly. And that's what's happened all over the country. And indeed, I'm working on a book now called Who Stole My Pension? How to Stop the Looting, where I look at globally pensions in the UK, Australia, Japan, Croatia, all over the place. Same issue. What I call gross malpractice generally practice. Most of these pensions are grossly mismanaged, and so they've underperformed. There's not enough money there. So that's why the people in these failing pensions, they deserve an explanation. It's not a question of that this pension had to fail because enough money was put in it. It's not a question of too rich benefits. It's a question that the people running the pension mismanage it grossly.
So question for you, Who Stole My Pension? Will Rhode Island be in this book?
In virtually every chapter where I explain what not to do, Rhode Island is cited as the example, yes. So Rhode Island is all over the book because so many things have been done wrong in Rhode Island. The $500 million hedge fund gamble, which is really remarkable in that you had an immediate call there at the outset saying this isn't going to work. A national expert came to Rhode Island and said this is not going to work 5 years before we ever found out whether it was going to work or not. And so it's very rare that you have a pension initiative, a pension gamble like that, which from day one is called out as being wrong-footed, imprudent. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. And so it can't be said it was unforeseeable. It was foreseen. And it was predicted, but the treasurer went ahead for her own. The then treasurer went ahead for her own political ambitions, political advantage, to bring in all these wealthy firms, pay them 10 times more money than had been paid before. I don't know. I was just reviewing for the book. When I first came to Rhode Island, the pension disclosed fees of $10 million. Now it discloses fees of $90 million. And within 6 months of my being on the scene, the disclosure went from $10 million to $40 million. So it was a dramatic run-up in fees with the disastrous results that you're still living with today. Despite the cuts in COLA benefit, that was supposed to make the pension more sustainable. The pension is no more funded today than it was almost 7 years ago.
So you told us you expect the Cranston pension investigation to wrap up by the end of the year. When do we expect Who Stole My Pension?
Who Stole My Pension is scheduled to come out January 14th, I think, the publishers told me. So I expect it'll be out there. There'll be some media coverage of it because apparently there's a lot of interest right now in the pension crisis globally. So it should be out in mid-January. My co-author on the book is Robert Kiyosaki, who was the writer of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series. He sold, I believe, 35 million copies. So hopefully Who Stole My Pension will sell 36 million copies.
Always got to be that #1 top SEC whistleblower, and now coming out with Who Stole My Pension? And here we are in the waiting days of November. It seems like January is going to be right around the corner, and I predict Another press opportunity is to talk with former SEC lawyer and top SEC whistleblower Ted Siedle. So Ted, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Goodbye to all my friends in Rhode Island.
Okay, we're going to let Ted go. We're going to pop down. When you see us pop back up, we're going to be talking some politics here on GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.